The Autumn Letters. In the quiet village of Marrow Hill, where amber leaves whispered in the breeze and cobblestone streets led to secrets only time could tell, there lived a young woman named Evelyn Hart. She was the village librarian, gentle, curious, and always lost in stories she never dared to live herself. Every autumn, Evelyn would sit by the window of the old library, sipping her tea as golden leaves danced past the panes. But one September morning, she discovered something strange tucked inside the pages of an old poetry book, a letter. Yellowed with age and written in delicate cursive, it read, "To the one who finds this. If you believe in fate, meet me beneath the willow tree by the lake at sunset on the 14th of October. L." It felt like a story from one of her novels. Was it real? Was it forgotten? Or was it a game? For weeks, the letter haunted her thoughts. Against her usual nature, she decided to go. When the 14th of October arrived, Evelyn stood under the ancient willow tree by the lake. The sky was painted with the warm hues of dusk, and for a while, there was only silence. Then he appeared. A tall man in a brown coat and scarf, carrying a worn leather notebook. His name was Liam Whitaker. He had placed the letter in the book exactly 10 years ago, hoping someone would find it one day. He had returned every October 14th since, just in case fate listened. "I never thought anyone would come," he said, smiling softly. "I almost didn't," Evelyn replied, "but something about your words felt like they were meant for me." They sat by the lake until the stars blinked awake. He told her about his past as a traveler, a writer without a place to belong. She told him about her quiet life, always waiting for something more, though she never knew what. From that day forward, they wrote each other letters. Long, handwritten pieces of their hearts folded into envelopes and left at the library or by the tree. Even though they lived in the same village, the letters became their sacred space, a way to say things they couldn't out loud. Autumn melted into winter. Snow painted the hills white, but Evelyn's heart stayed warm with Liam's words. In spring, he kissed her beneath the blooming cherry trees. In summer, they danced barefoot in the rain. But it was always autumn that belonged to them. Years passed, and their love only deepened. The villagers whispered about the librarian and the letter writer, about how their story began with fate and a forgotten page. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Liam brought Evelyn back to the willow tree. He handed her one last letter. "My dearest Evelyn, I wrote this a year before we met. I didn't know your name then, or your laugh, or the way your eyes catch the light. But I hoped with all my heart, that someone like you existed. You are my story, my home, and the greatest chapter of my life. Will you marry me? L." With tears in her eyes and joy in her heart, she said yes. And beneath the golden leaves of autumn, their story, written in ink, sealed in kisses, and kept in memory, continued. Forever. The Garden of Timeless Love. Chapter 1, The Hidden Garden. In a sleepy village nestled in the hills of Provence, where lavender fields stretched endlessly into the horizon, there lived a quiet artist named Alara. She had inherited a small stone cottage from her grandmother, who had once told her stories of a secret garden hidden behind the vineyard. It was said that those who found the garden would find their true love beneath the oldest willow tree. Alara never believed in such legends. She was content with her solitary life, painting sunsets, tending to her flowers, and sipping tea by the fireplace. But everything changed one spring morning when a letter arrived, unaddressed, save for a wax seal shaped like a rose. Inside was a map. Old, faded, but unmistakably pointing toward the forgotten garden. Chapter 2, A Stranger Among the Vines. Following the map's trail, Alara wandered through a thicket of overgrown vines until she stumbled upon the garden. Just as her grandmother had described. At the heart of it stood the massive willow tree, its leaves dancing gently in the breeze. To her surprise, someone was already there. A young man, sketching in a leather-bound journal, looked up with startled eyes. "I didn't think anyone else knew about this place," he said, rising to his feet. His name was Adrian, a traveler and writer who had been drawn to Provence by whispers of a mysterious garden where fate was said to weave its threads. They talked for hours that day, about art, about life, about the aching beauty of being alone yet still longing for something more. When the sun dipped below the hills, they promised to meet again. And they did. Every day. Chapter 3, Days of Bloom. Spring turned to summer, and with each visit to the garden, their hearts unfurled like petals under sunlight. Adrian brought stories from faraway lands, and Alara brought paintings that captured their memories. A sunbeam on his cheek, the flutter of a sparrow's wings, the way he smiled when she laughed. They never said they were in love. They didn't have to. The willow tree watched over them as they built a world within the garden, one filled with laughter, quiet companionship, and unspoken affection. But Adrian's time was running short. He was only in Provence for a season, on a journey to find inspiration before returning to a life he hadn't chosen, bound by family duty and expectations in Paris. Chapter 4, The Choice. As autumn neared, Alara began to notice the sorrow in Adrian's eyes. He hadn't told her yet, but she knew. The garden, once their sanctuary, now felt like a place of goodbye. "I don't want to leave you," Adrian whispered one evening as they lay beneath the willow tree. "Then stay," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't," he replied, "but I don't want this to be the end." Alara nodded, tears tracing her cheeks. "Then make it a beginning." Chapter 5, The Promise. Adrian left on the first day of October, leaving behind his journal filled with sketches of Alara and the garden. In it, a note. "If love is true, it never fades. I will find my way back to you. On the first day of spring, look for me beneath the willow tree." Seasons passed. Winter blanketed the garden in silence, and Alara returned to her art, pouring every ounce of her heart into her canvases. She waited. Every spring, she returned to the garden on the first day, always hoping, always watching. Years drifted by. Chapter 6, Spring's Return. On the 5th spring since his departure, Alara, now older and stronger, walked the familiar path again. The willow tree stood tall as ever, and the garden had begun to bloom before its time. She stood quietly, whispering his name in the wind. Just as she turned to leave, she heard a familiar voice. "Alara." She turned. There he was. Adrian. Older, wearier, but with the same eyes that had once looked at her like she was the beginning of every story. He had left everything behind, his city, his obligations, to return to the garden, to her. Chapter 7, Forever Beneath the Willow. They didn't need to speak. They embraced, their silence deeper than any word. From that day on, Alara and Adrian lived in the stone cottage by the vineyard. They opened the garden to others, lovers, dreamers, wanderers, inviting them to sit beneath the willow tree and believe in love once more. And the garden bloomed more beautifully than ever, nourished by the roots of a love that had waited, endured, and returned. A love that would never fade.